Give stuff away. Come on, man. Give
I'm
stuff
glad that I have a job. I'm glad somebody's watching.
Come on, man. Give stuff away. Come on, man. Give stuff away.
So on The Taste, you have a role as a mentor, which is obviously different than a lot of other shows you've done. What has been surprising to you about being a mentor for a lot of these contestants?
The word chef means chief, really. It doesn't mean you're a great cook necessarily, though that's
Right.
helpful. You know, when I was a chef for a couple of decades, it's very similar. You try to be a leader. You try to use everything you've learned in the course of your life to help other presumably less experienced people to
Right.
find their way. I mean, I enjoy it. I take it very seriously.
Yeah.
I go in every year thinking I'm not going to. It's just a show.
Right.
It's just a silly TV competition.
Right.
It doesn't
But then
really
it's real
matter.
people.
And very quickly, I think it's true of all of us. We become very invested in the success or failure of our not just our team, but the cooks on the other teams as well.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I think some people, given my reputation, I think people will be surprised that I try to be pretty nice and supportive
Yeah.
in my role as a mentor. Leave the yelling and screaming and rending of garments to Ludo.
You've also been a huge proponent, obviously, of cuisines that people aren't familiar with. But specifically for a U.S. audience, what cuisine do you think is sort of ripe to get the attention that it deserves?
You know, what's encouraging, first off, is that cuisines that you wouldn't have thought would finally grab hold of the American zeitgeist are really taking hold. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that people would have predicted that Korean would have grabbed such a ferocious hold on the
Right.
popular taste as it clearly has. It's, in many ways, I think, the future of American cooking. But I think Persian.
Yeah.
Persia is Iran. The food of the Persian Empire, I think, is a underappreciated and largely unknown. Peruvian.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of room there. But my greatest hope is that the food of the China Straits, that wonderful mix of sort of Singaporean, Malay, Indian, Chinese. That's probably where my heart lies. That I would like to see.
And you're helping bring it.
Singaporean-style hawker centers
Yeah.
all over America would make me very happy as a customer, just as an eater.
Give stuff away.
And you've also become now a publisher. You know, being on the other side of it, obviously, you know, Kitchen Confidential, you've been a writer on that side of it. But being a publisher, what have you found is, you know, new and interesting and exciting in the food space, you know, beyond, I think, sort of the standard cookbooks that people are used to, now having been in it for a little while?
I'll publish any voice, anyone who with an interesting voice saying something interesting, somebody with a story. You know, I'm one of these people who, if I see a film that I really, really like and feel passionate about, in a perfect world, had I the time, I would go to every one of my friends' houses, pound on their door until they answer, and then personally drag them to see the film and sit there and watch and make sure that they're paying attention during the entire screening of the
Did
film.
you see that? Did you see that?
So, in a sense, being a publisher allows me to do that with either pre-existing books or manuscripts that have been brought to me, or what's often the case, I'll become aware of somebody through a blog or an entertaining Twitter account or someone I've met in my travels who I just feel should write a book. And I'd like to help them do that. There's someone with an interesting voice, a story told in a way that other people are not telling it.
Give stuff away.
Now, today we're here talking about The Taste, which is on ABC, but you also have shows across a variety of networks, CNN, Esquire. Is it important to you to reach different types of audiences? Do you feel like you have a lot to contribute sort of to different types of audiences, or are you just hoping like, all right, this is the best show, who can I get it to?
I don't care. I'm glad that I have a job. I'm glad somebody's watching and that somebody's willing to pay for me to travel around the world doing pretty much whatever I like. Obviously, that's a really good gig, but I've found that it's a lethal impulse to want to know who's watching your show or reading your books and trying to anticipate what they might like. That's the road to madness and mediocrity. So I just never think about that. I make television and write books for my own entertainment and amusement. If it's interesting to me, I hope that it's interesting to somebody else, obviously. But I'm not thinking about, gee, what will that male 25 to 42 demographic like this week? Because you end up making, what's that Ashton Kutcher show that lasted like 92 years?
Right.
I'd kill myself season 1,
Right.
working on that show. I don't care how successful it is.
On the taste, one of the more interesting parts of the competition is obviously you have this blind tasting aspect. Having, worked on shows and worked in the kitchen, do you think that blind tasting could be brought to a real kitchen?
I think to some extent that happens during the menu process. Maybe your trusted sous chefs or chef de cuisine might come up and say, just try this, chef, and see, tell me if you like it.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what it is later.
Right.
Yeah. I like that idea, and I think it has some use. I'm not so crazy about the idea of customers being completely ignorant of what it is.
Right.
I like to know.
Right. You want to know what you're eating.
Is it pork or Soylent Green? I'd like to know ahead of time.
Right. But it works on the taste.
It works on the taste because we're trying to create as close to a meritocracy as possible. We're looking to not have the kind of preconceptions that we tend to have, and there are many all the time. You think there are certain flavor spectrums you associate with a certain type of people, and some of the fun of the show is having those turned upside down all the time. People surprise you when the door opens and they come out and you see who actually cooked the spoon that you either liked or really, really hated. You're constantly surprised.